Onyinye, welcome to the Power Within Your podcast. It's really lovely to have you on here. I was going to say that we were going to chat so much without recording. We had that feeling, didn't we? We're going to talk
Yeah.
and then we should hit record basically before we get into this. But it's so wonderful to have you here with me. And I was kind of previously mentioning to listeners, um, you know, uh, Onyinye has done so much incredible work with her own business and also with neurodiversity as well. So I can't wait for you to kind of listen into your journey and how you've kind of got to where you've got to. So I guess like let's start with you were 12 years old when you started tutoring. It's amazing. It's amazing. Tell me how all of that came back because that's a young age, man, to do anything, let alone
Yeah.
tutor. So yeah, tell me about your childhood and what kind of occurred to that point.
I had a very happy childhood, especially because I have parents that really believed in allowing children to quite literally follow their dreams or within reason do whatever they want or um, build whatever life that they desire to have, even though they are a child. And so tutoring at 12 years old started for three things, reasons. The first being I had exceptionally long summer holidays because I had the privilege, the honor of going to a very good independent school. I was there on a scholarship and I really wanted to give back to my local community. The school's mission was all about helping people from underserved communities gain access to an incredible education, especially because these young people, these children, would not ordinarily have access to that type of education. So I kind of grew up being inspired by this notion of giving back, helping others access things that they would not be able to access, and most importantly, that education was the way to do that. So I'd spent my first year at the school, had all this amazing messaging about giving back, about the power of education, seen the difference it had made in myself. I'm from Edmonton, which is a low socioeconomic area. There isn't a lot of aspiration here, and there's a lot of work to be done in terms of uplifting and upskilling the people of Edmonton. So I'd gone from that environment to going to a school where, I had tried three-course meals for the first time. And this may seem small, but this is all part of an education. There was the opportunity to try fencing if I wanted to do that.
Wow.
My time at school is where I really honed in on my skills as a public speaker. So I had the opportunity to become an amazing public speaker, and I got to the Oxford Schools finals by the time I was 17. I had all this amazing exposure. I did Model United Nations. School trips were to Paris. I think when I was there, they did like the sports teams did a tour to Australia or Barbados, one of the two. So
Wow.
a world very far away from what I was used to. So that's the first reason. Let me help others gain access to this opportunity or just generally upskill themselves because I know that the community which I'm from doesn't do that. The second thing, oh no,
Sorry,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I was about to say it's so altruistic, isn't it? Like such a young age to give back so much as well. Like I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think altruism in young people can really help them to develop themselves, and
Yeah.
it sounds like that really did as well. And I hear you about like the difference between an independent school, private school compared to like a public school. Like, I had sausage roll and packet crisp for lunch, do you know what I mean? Let alone
Yeah.
three-course meal. And because it's so vastly different. And you recognizing your advantage and then wanting to give back, I think is a beautiful thing. I just wanted to say that because I think that's incredible.
Oh, thank you. The second reason was a bit more of a practical one for a teenager, being that I wanted some pocket money. And even though I was at the school on a scholarship, my parents were making a financial contribution for me to be there. And I guess there was this sense of guilt that, like, I can't really be asking these guys for pocket money. And, like, they're paying school fees, and I'm one of four, I'm the eldest. And I've always been. Um, conscious of the cost of having loads of kids. 4 kids in the UK is a lot of children to have,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. And my parents always strive to give us the best, and I didn't want to hamper that. And then the third reason being that I've always had this streak of entrepreneurship in me. I was the first person in my primary school to um, put forward the idea of having a break time tuck shop, and then I manned and looked after the tuck shop from year 4 right through to year 6, and the profits that were made were used to give us the playground that we've always wanted. Um, so I've always had this thing in me of running a business, and I'd seen my mum run various different types of businesses. My TEDx talk kind of goes into her journey into entrepreneurship. She started at the age of 8. So if you think
Wow.
12 is
Yeah.
something to be impressed by, my mum's story is even more
It
impressive.
runs in the family,
Runs in the
eh?
family. And my grandmother on my mother's side is also an entrepreneur. And even though she's 75 now, she is still running her own businesses. Her business is in fashion. So she is a seamstress. She had effectively a seamstress school. I don't even know if that's the proper term.
Yeah.
But she's run boutiques. She has designed amazing dresses. If anyone sees me in a show-stopping dress, it's probably my grandmother
That's
that
wicked.
has
I love
designed it,
that.
which is
I love
amazing.
that.
But she's also into the trading business, so buying and selling. So she buys goods um, in the north of Nigeria that is often a lot cheaper, like produce, so food, and then transports it to the south and sells them, and then makes a huge profit and kind of turns that over. So I have grown up with a generation of female entrepreneurs. And I do like to draw emphasis to the fact that they're women because I also identify as a woman. And I think being able to see elements of me in them has been hugely encouraging, and is what it is what has kept me going up until now.
And I think the role modeling is so important, isn't it, as well? Like
Yeah.
if your parents or grandparents are role modeling that to you, then and ultimately you can do the same thing. And that's why I think it's so important for you to do the same, isn't it? Like so it
Yeah.
shows that you're also role modeling. So role modeling to other kids, role modeling to your peers, role modeling to like other, people to kind of do these things, which I think is amazing. And so it makes sense now why at 12 years old he
Yeah.
started tutoring, right, as well. But also it takes that maturity, I think, to be patient, to tutor another
Yeah.
person as well, right? How did that come about? What was there interest in tutoring beforehand?
Yes, so this may seem like my parents are crazy, and I promise you they're not. But I actually started having a tutor from the age of about 3 years old, and it was mainly because my parents, particularly my mother, noticed that my development was not happening at the rate at which she thought it should. She was comparing my academic development to that of my brother, who is only
Right.
13 months my junior. So I'm August 98, he's September 99. We're effectively twins. If he listens to this, he does not want to be my twin, which is fair enough. But he's very bright, very clever, picks things up immediately, had no issue with reading, writing, and spelling. And I did. I had a real big issue with reading, writing, and spelling, was a much slower learner, struggled to retain things. Now we know because of my dyslexia, it's all to do with my executive functioning and my um, ability to process things and needing extra time. And we also know that, and I need this message to be out there, that my neurodivergence has absolutely nothing to do with my intelligence. Like, we know that now, but at the time, that wasn't explicitly clear and there was no understanding. So, and I also need to say that when I say I had a tutor at the age of 3, it was my mum finding teenagers at church who would happily take a fiver. Back then, £5 was a lot of money,
It's
by
a
the
lot of
way,
money.
to come and help me with my school homework, but also to come and help me with things like my phonics, which again, me struggling with phonics was a big telltale sign. Now that I'm an expert, I know that it's a big telltale sign that, these are signs of dyslexia, but my parents were none the wiser. My mum felt the need to hire a tutor or these teenagers to tutor at the time. One, because she's from Nigeria. Her phonics are not going to be great. They're not going to meet the British standard. She doesn't have the accent. Their sounds are different to our sounds. My mom speaks like 6 different languages. So,
Mm.
it's not it she was worried about teaching me the wrong thing. The other thing is that she's dyslexic as well. So, two dyslexics together, to be honest, two dyslexics together, I think, is a great thing,
Powerful.
and it's powerful, and amazing things can come from it. But I think from a parent's perspective, I do feel that she felt, um, how can I teach you when I know I have these problems as well? So my interest from tutoring came from the fact that I've had a tutor from a very young age. I knew how the industry worked. And then as I got better, the tutoring actually really did help. I noticed that tutoring was very expensive.
Mm.
My parents paid for it for all four of us. Um, at the time, tutors were going for 30, £40 per hour. That was a lot of money then. It is still a lot of money now. Times that by four, plus music lessons, plus swimming, plus sport, it then becomes an expense that is not sustainable. So I
Mm.
always had it in the back of my mind that I'm going to do this and I'm going to bring down the cost. And I know that there are ways to bring down the cost because tutoring is still something that is reserved for the middle class, or dare I even say the upper middle class. But it's a tool that can really help those in the working class community get into the next tax bracket. And, it's not to say that everybody should want to do that with their lives, but I think it's important for people to have the choice to be able to do so if they so wish. So that's where the interest came from. It was from the fact that I had tutoring from a young age. I knew that it was super expensive. I knew that I wanted to bring the cost down. And there's something else that you said to touch on, having the patience to tutor. Well, I know what it's like to be a slow learner. I know what it's like to have teachers that didn't have the time for me and didn't have the patience for me because they didn't know I actually had a challenge. Well, I like to say a difference. They didn't know I had a learning difference. And so from my own personal experience, I've always endeavored to be patient, in the way that I do things and in the way that Enriched Learning does things for children because I've been on the receiving end of impatience and it's not nice.
No, you're absolutely right. Your mum sounds amazing, by the way. I'd like to meet her. She
Oh,
sounds
she's
very
just an
cool.
amazing woman. She really is.
And to recognize at such a young age, to be so observant of your child or children, to know that they might maybe struggling with stuff is quite amazing. That's real conscious parenting, I think.
Yeah.
And so did she know that she had dyslexia when you were getting tutored at 3 years old, or did she recognize that she had it as well, or is it something that came about later on in life for both of you?
So she noticed that she had a problem. Even
Mm.
up till now, she still refers to it as the problem. Um,
I love
we
that
only,
generation, man. It's like,
yeah.
is this a problem?
The issue, the problem, the challenge. She did not know that I had dyslexia. I did not know until I was 11, which I have to say, for those who are listening that are also dyslexic, that's a very young age in the grand scheme of things to be diagnosed with dyslexia. And it's a privilege to be diagnosed at a young age or as a child because the earlier you find out, the earlier you can get help and the better the outcomes will be for everyone. So she knew that we both had this problem. Her way of solving this problem when we were a child, when I was a child, was to get me to do copious amounts of cramming because we
Oh,
both have this ability, this
yeah.
amazing ability to cram, right? And so I would get up at 5:30 in the morning and we would like cram all these words. She had this book that she had bought with all the vocabulary that you're supposed to know at a certain age. And she would just we would just go through this vocabulary. We would do copious amounts of spelling tests. And I never learned how to read this stuff properly or how to pronounce this stuff properly, but we would just do this again and again and again until it stuck. Um, Once I get diagnosed at 11 years old, which there was resistance to the diagnosis, I'm sure you will relate. In many ethnic minority communities, what do you mean my child has a condition? You know, if that parent is religious, the first phrase would be, God forbid, not my child, not my portion, excuse me, what are you trying to say? And my mom's response, I'll never forget, because I had to call her because obviously I'm in this boarding school. She goes, "No, you don't have an illness. Don't let any teacher make you think that you have an illness." That's literally what my
Amazing.
mother said.
Good,
Um,
good.
and she was like, you're not sick. Like, she actually came to the school. I was like, I want to know this teacher that's come to tell you about this illness I've never even heard of. And they handled it so brilliantly well. I'll never forget sitting in the school dining hall. It was a parents' evening, and they explained to her that it wasn't an illness. And there and then she went, "Oh, I have the same thing." Like, if we're talking about the problem, I've had this my whole life. Are you ready to help my child? So, that was a really beautiful thing for me to see. She readily accepted the problem, as she likes to refer to it as. She readily accepted that I had this learning difference. The resistance wasn't to the fact that I had a difference. The resistance was to the fact that she felt it was being portrayed as an illness or a disease, and she didn't like that idea, which is fair enough. But she accepted it with open arms and implemented every strategy they said that she should implement at home for me, and was very encouraging of every strategy they put in place for me at school. Um, and that was super helpful because I had things like extra time. I still read and write on brightly colored paper. My color is yellow. And so I was getting a bit bullied for that. And I remember calling her and feeling like, I just want this all to stop. Maybe we should just stop all the solutions to this issue that I have. And I remember her saying, "No, we have to keep going because this is going to help you. This is serving you. The pain hurts now, but it will stop later, and people will get used to the fact that you read and write on yellow. People will get used to the fact that you need, the extra 25% time to do things." And she was right. So that's how she discovered she's also dyslexic. Well, at least the problem had a formal name. But most importantly, she accepted the help for me and for herself.
I mean, the support I think is key when it comes to neurodiversity and having neurodivergent traits as well. I have a few questions actually that are coming from kind of what you were just saying just now. I guess the first thing is, I guess dyslexia presents itself differently with every individual, basically, as well. But what were the main, if someone was thinking about, they were thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm dyslexic or they didn't have the information, how could you sort of describe what dyslexia is and how does it present itself?
So, textbook wise, there's a lot of focus on reading, writing, spelling, phonological skills, so the ability to pronounce words correctly. And generally speaking, dyslexia is that it's the difficulty one might have with reading, writing, and spelling, the difficulty one might have with pronouncing things. But I've been very passionate about driving home the fact that dyslexia is so much more than that.
Mm.
So not for everyone, but for quite a few dyslexic people, including myself, it's our ability to process things. It's not that we can't process things, but we need a bit more time. Um, this may seem like a really silly example, and I do not want people to finish listening to this podcast and think, "Oh, right, I'm dyslexic because I do the same thing." Because dyslexia is a combination of different challenges that have showed up repeatedly and possibly even gotten worse over time because there's been no support put in place to help mitigate those challenges. But my mum and I do this all the time. The car keys. Um, we walk into the room, we stare, we look round the whole room. We know we've come into the room for this reason. We can't remember, so we walk back out of the room and we just wander around the house even more. We eventually remember it's the car keys we came into the front room for. So we go to where the car keys are. We're holding the car keys in our hand. And within the next 2 to 3 minutes, we're now having a massive panic because we've lost said car keys. This is a real thing. Like, this is not us being silly. This is not us being ditzy. This is our lived experience. And you can imagine how much anxiety this causes because it's a daily experience. even things like getting out of the house, because our processing and our executive functioning just isn't the same as everyone else's, we have to spend extra time getting ready. So everyone has gotten used to the fact that my mum's phone, her iPhone alarm, is just part and parcel of this household because it goes off for everything. She's actually had to sit down and gone, right, at 7:30 the alarm goes off for the shower. At 8 o'clock the alarm goes off. I must be dressed at this time. And it's very specific. After 8 o'clock, it then becomes very strange timings. At 7 minutes past eight, I must be downstairs putting on my shoes. At 8:15, I must have picked up, and her alarm literally says, pick up flask. 8:20, get out of the house. 8:22, get out of the house again. It may seem like, oh, this is really excessive. But if we don't do this, unfortunately for us, we're not going anywhere. And if we are going somewhere, we're going to be very late. For me, it's my smartwatch. This thing is the best investment I've made this year. Best investment. Alexa, we are best friends on this smartwatch because all I have to say is, Alexa, I hope she doesn't switch on right now, but remind me to do X in 45 minutes. Remind me to move on to X task in 10 minutes. If we don't do this, I just feel like to us, time doesn't move. We stay stuck in the same place or same situation. That causes further delays. Those further delays impact things, and then that causes anxiety or manifests in some other way. So to me, dyslexia, there is the reading, writing, spelling element side of things that we struggle with. That being said, we're not incapable of doing it. I'm a published author. I went to university not once, but twice. I wrote the dissertation twice. And whilst I was at university, I was a top performing student. When I was at school, I was also a top performing student. But it's that there are challenges in the way in which we read, write, and spell. We have to do it differently. And I would also say that there's things like directional dyslexia. I don't know my left from my right. I can't read a map. Now my psychiatrist's report says that I'm also mildly dyspraxic, but then the psychiatrist couldn't quite believe it because I'm also quite sporty. So it like to her it just didn't make any sense, which is again,
That's
I
coordination, isn't
think
it? Dyslexia. It's like how
yeah,
you
it's to
coordinate.
do
Yeah.
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 Now, again, this report was written in 2016, which is almost 10 years ago. Um, so even then, neurodivergence wasn't widely spoken about. I don't think, I would hope that a psychiatrist wouldn't write a report like that again, because I read it back earlier this year and I just thought, whoa, I can't believe they got away with
Mm,
writing this in the way that they
mm.
did. Because I think you can still be very sporty and be dyspraxic. It's like someone saying,
You can't do this because
dyslexic,
of, yeah,
yeah, that you can't read because you're
yeah.
dyslexic. No, I can, but it needs to be in a dyslexia friendly font. I need to have line spacing. It needs to be on brightly colored yellow paper. And if you can't get the yellow paper, it needs to be on an off-white paper or a cream paper, right? So I can do these things, it's just with a difference. So I digress, typically dyslexic as well, like going meandering and not
It's
always giving you the
perfect.
straight answer. But I hope my meandering has shown that dyslexia is so many things. I think it starts off with, or one thing you may observe as a parent of your child or even of yourself is you may notice that the reading is delayed. The development in that child's reading is delayed. Their inability to spell correctly, writing may also be delayed as well as a starting point. But it's also observing different things, what's their short-term memory like versus their long-term memory. So I've got an incredible long-term memory, but my short-term memory, which is why I always forget that I'm holding the car keys in my hand, isn't so great. And it's being able to connect those dots and really building a case. I think with neurodivergence, it's a case of building a case in order to really believe or know that there's something more than just you've not bothered to practice your spelling test this week.
And that's it, isn't it, as well? Like, I think the generalization of dyslexia is that it's reading and writing, basically, or issues around that. But actually, you're going much deeper into how it could impact your life in various ways. And that car key example is a great way to explain it as well, I think. And I think lots of people will be able to relate to that, hopefully, as well. But there's one thing you mentioned about, because obviously there's mental health, there's neurodiversity. They are separate things, but they also can be connected. If you don't get the right support, or if you're not feeling good about certain things, it can cause anxiety, depression, and that sort of stuff as well. Did you face any type of mental health issues when you were trying to figure out your your journey, your path around dyslexia?
Yeah, I mean, still battling with it today. I like
Yeah.
to say that to have a real authentic conversation about neurodiversity, it has to be intersectional.
Mm,
And the intersection between neurodivergence and mental health is huge.
mm,
So I started battling with anxiety from about the age of 15. And I'm
mm,
not just talking about, oh, I feel a bit anxious. I don't really want to go to school today. TMI, but I'm talking about food coming out of both ends of the body, like
bless you.
repeatedly. Um, I'm talking about before my major exams or during my major exams being really thin because I just avoided all food that would
Just in
trigger.
case it would, you would
I
get
mean,
sick.
it would
Yeah,
still get triggered, unfortunately. And it's the anxiety of will I be able to even read the exam question properly? Will I be able to write? Will I be able to manage the time that I've been given, even though I have that extra time? As an adult now, that I'm working, the anxiety has manifested itself in IBS. So I had really bad IBS at university. Um, I remember going to the doctor about it, and they literally were just like, "Don't eat onions and garlic," and I just thought to myself, no, it's so much deeper than that. I was very fortunate to go to a school that could afford for me to get the right help. So I engaged in a lot of what they call neuro-linguistic programming. I'm not sure
hmm
if you've heard of it, but I had
NLP. Yeah,
NLP sessions,
yeah.
and that really, really helped. No, you're not being hypnotized because I know some people are going to take what I've just said and go, right, okay, so she's been hypnotized. And I remember my first session saying to my NLP coach, I feel like you're hypnotizing me, but it's not that at all. It's a
Yeah.
mindset change, but also learning the importance of language. So important when you're battling with anxiety. The messaging that you tell yourself is often what triggers whatever or however your anxiety manifests. Um, I also had counseling and therapy when I was at school, and that really helped a lot. Talking therapy helps so much more than people think. As an adult now, I have like specific anxiety therapy and just general therapy as well. Um, I am very fortunate to have done some incredible things already at 25, but that comes with a lot of added pressure, right? And sometimes being positioned as this spokesperson for the Black community about neurodivergence is a huge pressure because in no way am I trying to be the voice of reason for that community. I am a voice in a sea of many voices, and I'm just here trying to amplify the voices that are often not heard, because I've been fortunate enough to be given the platform to do so. So, yeah, for me, I I say unfortunately, but in some ways I say it's fortunate because it's made me really understand what anxiety is and really sympathize with my friends that have um challenges with their mental health and my friends that experience mental illness. It's really helped me understand the position that they are in. So it's fortunate in that way. It's made me a much more compassionate and empathetic person and a better leader.
Mm.
But generally speaking, it's not a nice thing to have. And on Friday was the very first time that I was going to give a pretty big talk at a conference, and I had breakfast, and breakfast stayed down. And I had lunch before the talk, and lunch stayed down, right? So it means the therapy is working and the strategies are working. But many a time, especially if I have those weeks where I've got a lot of speaking, including doing this podcast, beforehand, I wouldn't eat because I just can't run the risk of saying excuse me, can I run to the bathroom? You know? I've been caught out at train stations and stuff before. I mean, it's
Oh
just
no,
awful.
of
It's
course they would.
awful. You know,
Yeah.
you have to ask yourself, can I wear those white pair of trousers? You actually have to ask yourself. And I know that people might think, what? But you do have to think that far ahead, because I know I've been in a position where it's like, oh, thank God it's black, or thank God it's navy blue, which is horrible for people to have to think about. But this is the reality that many people face. And I speak so openly about it because I'm tired of people feeling ashamed of it. I am not ashamed of it. It's actually part of who I am. Um, and I'm working really
That's the
hard to
thing.
change it.
And you have to talk about these things, right, for people to understand and relate to, and because otherwise you're hiding stuff which you shouldn't ever be ashamed of. Like
Yeah,
it's one of the symptoms of anxiety, isn't it, as well? And
yeah,
there are so many people, one in like I think 1 in 6 people suffer from anxiety and depression as well. And this is like globally. It's like it's something we need to kind of deal with and think about as well. So I really appreciate your openness about that. But I'm really happy to hear that you're getting the right help that you need as well. And like you said, I think talking therapies are a great way to kind of be able to talk through your anxieties and think about what it is and hopefully manage them. And like you said, what a massive breakthrough last Friday of
yeah,
having regulating, it's almost regulating yourself, isn't it? So that
yeah,
you don't get sick and being
yeah,
able to like work through your nerves and anxiety to deliver something. And what's even more amazing is that you push yourself to do it anyway. Even though you get
yeah,
anxiety, you're still doing the talks. That's resilience, isn't it? You're still
yeah,
bouncing
it
back from it
is.
and still doing it. Lots of people would have stopped doing that because they couldn't go through that pressure. So what's that motivation? What keeps you going, even though you're having that anxiety? What keeps you going through it?
I know that the message that I have is far more powerful than the anxiety that I experience. I know that the lives and the impact it will have is far bigger than the anxiety that I'm experiencing. And more importantly, I think it's because from a young age, I knew the importance of dropping ego.
Mm.
It's not about me, you know, it may look like it is. And getting to this point, or getting to the point where I've been given such a huge platform to voice my message, requires you to some extent to make things all about you, in the sense that, your follower count matters these days. I don't see why it should, but unfortunately, people will ask you, so what's your reach? Who listens to you? Why do they listen to you? But I think being able to see beyond that point and never being motivated by that point, I'm not motivated by the power of me. I'm motivated by the influence my words have in empowering others. If someone listens to this and feels a bit better, if someone listens to this and has a pep in their step and knows that they're not wrong or they're not broken, or that they too have been caught out at train stations with, awful IBS situations, my job is done. And I think my advice to anybody who wants to do similar work is drop the ego and realize that it's actually not about you. Like, it's not about the issues I'm facing. Respectfully, it's not about my anxiety. At the end of the day, I've been booked to come and speak to you about my neurodivergence in a bid to educate you, raise awareness, celebrate neurodivergence, but also give you strategies to become more neuroinclusive. That's where the buck stops. I can deal with me later on. I am responsible for me. You are not responsible for me, right?
Yeah.
And I do think at 25 is quite a young age to realize that. And I'm very lucky that I haven't been sucked into the vanity matrix. Of course, um, there have been times where the vanity metrics have, um, like I've wondered, why don't I have 100,000 followers? Like, my message is so much more important than X's. And these are younger versions of myself speaking, so not me right now. But I quickly realized that what a pathetic way to think, and what an exhausting way to think as well. Um,
It's
so
so
yeah,
upside down, isn't it, to think about you're only valued if you have this amount of followers, and
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense in the world, as well. In fact, like it means my Instagram's private. I've reduced the amount of followers or people I'm following as well, just to try and keep it quite basic as well. LinkedIn's a bit different, isn't it? It's a more professional platform and that sort of
yeah,
stuff as well. But like you said, it's not. it's about doing what you're doing with a purpose and with joy and meaning rather than like the following or whatever it is, because that will
Yeah,
also stress you out and also cause anxiety, probably as well,
exactly.
right?
And that's a conversation I really had to have with myself, especially as a Gen Z person. There is that element of, should I focus on getting my content to go viral? And, you know, to anyone listening to this with anxiety, or people that experience anxiety, you're not doing yourself any favors by going viral, because then you've got millions of eyes, which we would hope everyone would be happy to hear your content, but in the grand scheme of life, that's just not how it works.
Mm.
Unfortunately, there will be people who will have something negative to say, and with your anxiety, are you in the best position to deal with that level of critique? I'm not talking about one person commenting on your TikTok that they don't like your opinion. I'm talking about tens of thousands, possibly giving it an unlike or giving you an unfollow if you say something. And is that something that you need to deal with, or can you even, do you have the capacity to deal with it? You really have to ask yourself, if you can cope with it. I think we're not honest enough with young people about the implications of virality, for example, and how it's great for that moment, but also how unsustainable it is to continuously be viral. And how, in order to maintain that virality, you have to do something even more outrageous, or you have to say something even more controversial to keep the likes and the follows, etc. So, if you feel that you're up to it and you can manage that, great, good for you, go on your way. But if you feel that you're not up to it and you can't do it, that's also fine. I mean, I have still served some of the world's biggest organizations and I don't have 100,000 followers. I
You don't
don't.
need to. But like before social media, people were doing the same thing as well, right? People were
Yeah,
serving other people based on their knowledge, based on their passion, based on their joy, based on their meaning, and giving people that help. But so I hope that, in terms of that changes, because it's social media is can be an amazing great thing, but also it's very toxic as well
yeah,
at the same time, I think. And I think a lot of mental health issues, especially in young people, are being caused by the comparisons about about being all these things. And actually, if you take it back to basics about the meaning of life and what your purpose is, I think that's where we're missing stuff, the link basically as well.
but also you
um
found me. And
I
you
think
actually found me. I don't have
exactly
100,000
exactly
followers, and we're here having
no.
this really important conversation, and this is going to reach loads of people as well. So I think it depends on how you look at things. It depends on the lens through which you see life and what your end goal is. All I would say to you is, for me, I was able to overcome my anxiety because I dropped my ego and I very quickly realized that my work is not about me, it's about others.
Beautiful. That's such great advice, as well. And like at 25, you have achieved so much already. You're a TEDx speaker, you've published a book on dyslexia as well. You have your own business, you're smashing it basically in every way. So tell me, what does the future hold for you as well? I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see what's going on. But like, what does the
Thank
future hold
you.
for you, do you feel?
So one thing that I'm doing next year is with my tutoring business, taking it on a little pivot with the online side. So I have a face-to-face tuition center, and we also do special educational needs assessments for children and adults. And those assessments have really changed people's lives and given them the workplace needs or the school needs or adjustments that they need. And so I'm really proud of that. But in 2024, what I really want to do is build a community around that. Um, Particularly a community for ethnic minority parents to just come and learn more about the education system in the UK, because it's really complicated, actually. It's
Mm.
not straightforward at all. It's chopping and changing. Education in the UK is so inextricably linked to politics. So every
Mhm.
time we have a new schools minister, every time we have a new Secretary of State for Education, they want to come and change the rules. And over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of different people in those positions. New rules means new procedures, means new qualifications. I mean, didn't Rishi Sunak say he wants everyone to do like maths and English until
Mm.
A level. Now, if he stays as prime minister, that may well and truly happen.
And
If he
hopefully won't.
doesn't, hopefully it will. I mean, let's not even talk about that's for another podcast
This is another
episode.
podcast.
That's another episode. We can talk about education another time.
I feel
Um,
very ashamed that Britain is being run by racist Indians, basically.
um, so it's one of those things where like we the education system is so complicated, it's always chopping and changing. And the people it actually affects the most are the ethnic minorities because by the time they've caught on to that change, it's changed again. So I really want to build a community for these parents, and young people, but mainly serving these parents, continuing to serve and provide that tuition online, but really being that source and that hub, and also creating a community around learning needs and neurodivergence and empowering parents to know that it is okay if you are neurodivergent or your child is neurodivergent. So that's one big change that people will see. They'll see there's been like a whole new Instagram account, and I'm going to be doing webinars, and a lot of this offering is actually going to be free of charge because not because I don't value the work that I do, but because I believe access to entry is super important for me,
Right.
and it's super important for the business. I wish I could say the tuition would be free as well, but I actually have to pay the
Yeah,
tutors
pay
and
bills.
like, yeah, there are bills that have to be paid, but there's going to be a lot of information out there for parents that will be free. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I do feel another book coming. I do
Mm.
feel another book coming. I'm
Mhm.
not sure exactly when, but I think I mean, I wasn't even expecting to write this book, if I'm being honest. It happened via an Instagram DM and then it took off. But I do feel another book coming. I just want to make sure that, like the first book, the next book really serves people in a way that it hasn't, in a way that they haven't been served before. So it's kind of nailing down where the pain points are. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is I accidentally grew the second business, the neurodiversity consultancy. And this year I've served Channel 4,
Brilliant.
KPMG, the BBC, like just the most insane names. And so continuing to grow that, I'm in the middle of writing a new, in fact, oh, your podcast is the first time people will be hearing about this. I'm in the middle of putting together a keynote speech, which I hope people will book to listen to. It's all about, well, the theme is neurodiversity and innovation, or how neurodivergent employees bring innovation to the table. So I'm working on that at the moment. My long-term goal with that business is to think of a way in which I can build tech that will help these organizations with their neurodiversity training and education.
It's much needed.
Um, because it's so needed, and from an intersectional point of view, because we don't have all the time in the world, so I won't go into it, but we spoke about neurodiversity and dyslexia more generally today. We have not spoken about how it affects people that identify as female,
Mhm.
because that's a whole other thing. I was
Mhm.
featured in the Reader's Digest,
Mhm.
where I spoke about this challenge, this problem, why we have this challenge, why women mask so much. And I even wrote a post on LinkedIn about the fact that the world just needs to stop having these preconceptions of what they believe a woman should be, because it's the preconceptions that make it so difficult for women to get that much needed diagnosis for them to move forward. So those are my big dreams at the moment.
And they're
Um,
happening. They're in progress.
yeah, they're in
That's for sure.
progress. They are in progress. I'm a very big believer in, if you, and thanks to my parents, if you really want to go out there and do something, actually just do it. And I probably will get told off for saying this, but don't ask permission. Like,
Mm.
say sorry if you get it wrong.
Mm.
Because I think when we wait to ask for permission, we never do anything.
No, it stops
Um,
us in our tracks. We don't
yeah,
take risks. We don't move forwards. And I think that's really important what you said, right? Like just do what you need to do, basically.
society is a lot more forgiving than people think.
Yeah, agreed. And I think also, it's about serving that purpose. If you have that purpose that drives you, you'll just do it anyway, right? And because, and you have that purpose, and by accident, you've been like going to all these amazing companies and talk about neurodiversity and that sort of stuff. And it's just the future sounds so exciting for you. Yeah, it just sounds wonderful, and I wish you all the best of luck, and
Thank
I can't wait
you.
to see and follow you as well, and see what you do, and maybe work together in the future. Who
I'd love
knows,
that.
right? As well. But I mean, if people wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way to kind of contact you and talk to you more about the work that you're doing?
So the best way to do it is there's a booking form on my or contact form on my website. The reason why I say that is because I get loads of DMs, which my amazing EA Catherine, like she does check my DMs because I just get so overwhelmed by it all. It's that executive functioning. Like sometimes I open the app like, right, I'm gonna do the LinkedIn DMs, and then I don't know, some pop-up
Shut
comes
it
up
down.
on WhatsApp and then it's gone. But there's a contact form on my website. My website is literally www.onyinyeudokporo.com. Like it's really easy. Um, if that doesn't work for you, then feel free to DM me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. I will eventually get back to you, but Catherine picks up all the contact form stuff. Or you can just email us at admin@onyinyeudokporo.com. She will happily respond. And I actually do take time and pride in personally responding to people's messages. I do not think I'm so high and mighty. I'm not Beyonce yet, okay? That
Well,
I
not
won't
yet.
respond.
Give it a
Not
few
yet.
years.
But I genuinely do struggle to like keep up with all the platforms. And then, you know, Mark Zuckerberg will come out and say he's got another messaging app, and honestly, I just can't deal anymore. But yeah, no, that's the best way to get in touch.
Oh, that's amazing. And I would really encourage the listeners to please get in touch with Onyinye as well, because like you are amazing. You're very
Thank you.
inspiring, and it's been like really wonderful to speak to you today as well. And like I said, I can't wait to see what you do next as well. So yes, please get in touch. And Onyinye, thank you so much for being on the Power of the New podcast. It's been wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.